We have sent probes to the edge of the solar system. We have photographed black holes 11 billion light-years away. We've walked on the moon, planted flags in its dust, and looked back at our pale blue dot from the void. And yet, we have mapped more of the surface of Mars than we have of our own ocean floor. Think about that for a moment. The abyss beneath our ships, beneath our beaches. Beneath the water we swim in, every summer rate, remains more mysterious to us than an alien world millions of miles away. Space is empty, vacuum, a cold, silent nothing. But the ocean is not empty. It is full of pressure that would crush your bones to powder, full of darkness so absolute that light has never touched it, full of living things with no eyes, no concept of the sun, no relationship to anything we would recognize as life. We do not know what is down there. Perhaps on some level, we don't want to know. Here's a paradox that should unsettle you. H.P. Lovecraft is synonymous with cosmic horror, that particular brand of existential dread that comes from contemplating a vast, indifferent universe. And yet his most iconic creation, his most enduring nightmare, does not float among the stars. Cthulhu sleeps beneath the Pacific Ocean, not in some distant galaxy, not in the spaces between worlds, but here, below, in a sunken city called Roulette, built of impossible geometry, waiting. So the question becomes unavoidable. What is it about the deep sea that frightened the master of cosmic horror more than the infinite emptiness of space? And what does his answer reveal about the darkest corridors of your own mind? To understand why Lovecraft placed his god in the ocean, we must first understand something about ourselves, something ancient, something we have carried in our bones since before we had words. Long before Lovecraft put pen to paper, humanity was already terrified of the deep. Consider the monsters of antiquity: Leviathan, the great sea beast of Hebrew scripture, chaos incarnate, coiling beneath the waves; Charybdis, the swirling maw of Greek mythology that swallowed ships whole and spat out splinters; the Kraken of Norse legend, pulling sailors into the abyss with arms the size of masts. And then there were the maps. Medieval cartographers, reaching the edge of known waters, would inscribe a warning where their knowledge ended. Here be dragons, not in the sky, not among the stars, in the sea. For millennia, the ocean represented the boundary of the known world. The stars were distant, gods remote, untouchable, abstract. But the sea? The sea was a monster within arm's reach. Could hear it, smell it, watch it swallow men who never returned. Lovecraft inherited this fear. He was born in Providence, Rhode Island, on the edge of the Atlantic. The cold New England coastline was his constant companion. And by his own admission, he found the ocean deeply, viscerally disturbing. His letters reveal a man who described the sea as abysmal and loathsome. He wrote of its depths containing unmentionable things. This was not intellectual posturing. This was genuine revulsion, personal, almost physical. So when Lovecraft sat down to write The Call of Cthulhu in 1926, he did not place his dead god among distant stars. He placed it in the South Pacific, in a sunken city called Relaya, place built of non-Euclidean geometry, where the very laws of reality break down. The imagery is crucial. Cthulhu does not descend from space. It rises from below. The horror is not arriving from somewhere else. It was always here, submerged, waiting. And there is something profoundly significant about the direction of beneath. Space is out. There above, beyond. To go into space is to ascend, to rise, to escape, to transcend. But the ocean is down, below. It is the direction of burial, of sinking, submersion. To enter the abyss is not to rise, but to descend into pressure, into darkness, into the crushing weight of the world pressing in on all sides. Lovecraft understood this instinctively. The sea was not merely a location for horror. It was a symbol of something far more disturbing, something psychological. In 1930, Sigmund Freud received a letter from his colleague, Romain Rolland. Rolland wanted to discuss something he called the oceanic feeling, a sensation of boundlessness, of the ego dissolving into something vast and infinite. Rolland believed this feeling was the true source of religious experience, a mystical merging with the universe. Freud disagreed, profoundly. In his response, published in Civilization and Its Discontents, Freud argued that this oceanic feeling was not spiritual transcendence, it was regression, a return to the infantile state before the ego had formed, before the self had separated from the world, before boundaries existed. The ocean, psychoanalytically speaking, is not peace, it is ego death. Freud's student Carl Jung took this further. He envisioned the unconscious not as a personal attic filled with forgotten memories, but as a collective ocean, a shared psychic reservoir containing archetypes older than any individual life. To dive into the unconscious is to descend into ancestral waters. The creatures swimming there are not your memories. They are inherited terrors. Fears passed down through generations, encoded in the species itself. The sea monster, in Jung's framework, is an archetype, the shadow of something ancient living within every human mind. Now consider Lovecraft's monsters, Cthulhu, the Deep Ones, the Shoggoths. What do they have in common? Tentacles. Why tentacles? Of all the forms horror could take, why this particular anatomy? Think about what a tentacle does. It reaches, it grasps, it ensnares from places unseen. It is autonomous, yet connected to something larger, something hidden. It emerges from below, from darkness, from depths you cannot perceive until it is already too late. The tentacle is a perfect psychoanalytic symbol. It is the repressed reaching up. It is the buried thought, the forbidden impulse. The thing you pushed down into the darkness now extending toward the light. You cannot see what it is attached to. You only see the part that is surfaced. And then there is the pressure. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the pressure exceeds 16,000 pounds per square inch. A human body would be crushed instantly, annihilated. In psychoanalysis, repression is also described in terms of pressure forces, pushing down on thoughts and impulses, too dangerous for conscious life. The abyss is not merely dark, it is heavy. To descend is to be compressed. What lives in those depths has adapted to pressures that would destroy us. This is why the ocean terrifies us more than space ever could. Space is absence, cold, empty, indifferent. It threatens us with meaninglessness, the horror of realizing that nothing is out there, that we are alone in a void that does not care. But the ocean is present. It is full. It is pressing. It is alive with things that have no relationship to light, no connection to our surface logic, no awareness that we exist except when we descend into their domain. Space threatens us with nothing. Ocean threatens us with something vast, something that has been there far longer than we have, something that does not think like we think, does not see like we see, and that something is looking back. If Lovecraft's oceanic terror were merely a relic of the early 20th century, we could dismiss it, a quirk of one man's neurosis, a historical curiosity. But the opposite has happened. In the last 2 decades, we have descended into the abyss and brought back photographs. And what we found looks like pages torn from Lovecraft's nightmares. The vampire squid creature that lives in the oxygen minimum zone, where almost nothing else can survive, cloaked in webbed arms lined with fleshy spines. The Borelli fished with a transparent skull through which you can see its rotating tubular eyes. Bioluminescent horrors that generate their own light in eternal darkness because no other light has ever reached them. Giant isopods, gulper eels. Things without names filmed once and never seen again. Every expedition confirms the same unsettling truth. The ocean is not empty, it is too full, full of the incomprehensible, full of forms that evolution shaped without any reference to our world, our light, our logic, and yet we resist looking. Consider this asymmetry. NASA's annual budget is roughly $25 billion. NOAA, eighth agency responsible for oceanic exploration, receives less than a quarter of that. We have launched telescopes to photograph the edge of the observable universe. We have barely scratched the Hadal Zone. Why? The technology exists. The scientific value is immense. So why do we pour resources into looking up while barely glancing down? One possible answer: we want to see what is in space. We're not sure we want to see what is in the ocean. The resistance is not technological, it is psychological. We sense on some level that the abyss contains something we would rather not confront, and yet our culture keeps returning to it. The 2010s and 2020s have witnessed an explosion of oceanic horror, Subnautica, Soma, Sunless Sea, Dredge. Films like Underwater and The Meg, these are not simply monster movies or adventure games. They are explorations of isolation, of pressure, of what waits below the surface. Millions of people are voluntarily descending into virtual abysses, drawn to the terror like moths to a drowning light. Why? Because they sense intuitively that the ocean represents something internal, something they recognize. And now consider this. The oceans are warming. Sea levels are rising. Permafrost is melting, releasing viruses frozen for millennia. Methane is bubbling up from the seabed. Things buried long ago are surfacing. Lovecraft wrote that our lay would rise when the stars are right. Today, the rising feels less metaphorical. What humanity has buried: carbon, waste, the repressed consequences of a century of industries coming back up. The return of the repressed is no longer just a psychological concept. It is ecological. It is literal. We live in an age of ambient dread, mental health crises, societal fractures, persistent feeling that something is wrong beneath the surface of modern life. Lovecraft's ocean was never just water. It was a metaphor for everything we push down, hoping it stays submerged. The tentacles are reaching. Here is the strangest part of this story. Lovecraft never read Jung. He dismissed Freud as a charlatan. He had no interest in psychoanalysis, no patience for its theories, no awareness of the concepts we have been exploring. And yet, his fiction is a near-perfect externalization of psychoanalytic terror. Ancient forces buried in the depths, non-Euclidean geometries that defy rational thought, the very illogic of the unconscious made architectural, tentacled gods that rise when the barriers break down, cities that should not exist, submerged beneath crushing pressure, waiting for the moment when something shifts and they surface once more. Lovecraft wrote the unconscious into mythology without ever knowing its name. Perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the ocean does not require understanding to be felt. It is too primal for that. Too deep, you carry an ocean within you, the deep psyche. The pressurized spaces you do not visit are the thoughts that live without light, that have adapted to darkness because you pushed them there. The things you have buried so long ago that you have forgotten their names. What sleeps in your depths? What have you built walls to contain? Lovecraft's true insight was not that the universe is indifferent. It was that the real horror is intimate. It is not out there among the stars. It is inside you. It has been there all along, so that is not dead which can eternal lie. Cthulhu waits dreaming in air lie. And so, perhaps, do you? The ocean is terrifying not because it is unknown. It is terrifying because it knows us. It is the unconscious made geographic. And it is, even now, full of things we do not understand, because we put them there. What have you buried in your own depths? And what happens when it wakes?